In this Kotlin on Android development tutorial, we're going to learn how to implement video streaming using the ExoPlayer. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel. Okay, so we're going to implement video streaming, this time using the ExoPlayer. So we'll create a new application from scratch. Start a new Android Studio project. I'll call this ExoPlayer Streaming. We're going to use a dash URL this time. And of course, make sure you include the Kotlin support here, or else you could have problems. Select next. I'm going to keep the defaults here. Empty activity, and just use main activity where you're going to use one activity. And select finish for that, and wait for Android Studio to build our project. Okay, that's now built. So what we need to do is to get the ExoPlayer library. We'll just go into my website here. I've just put some information. So what you want to do is check in your higher level build.gradle file that we've got these two repositories there. So back into Android Studio, and open up the build.gradle, and yes, I've got Google and JCenter, so that's correct. Let's go back into the website here, and we need to add the ExoPlayer dependency there. I'm going to be lazy this time. I'm just going to copy and paste that, and we'll go back into our Android Studio and open up the module build.gradle file, app1, and we'll add that dependency just down here. Save that, and we will need to resync up here our Gradle files, and we'll just wait for that to complete. After the Gradle sync has complete, we're going to go into our Android manifest file and add permissions to the internet, and we'll just set the wait lock as well. So add the internet one here, and also add the wait lock. And we need the wait lock just to remind you, just to make sure the operating system doesn't put our phone into standby while we're watching a video. Okay, now we can go into our layout file and set that up. So go into resources, layout, activity main. I'll just close that. We can remove the text view. We don't need no hello world. And I'm going to change the constraint layout just to linear layout. And linear layouts do require you to set the orientation. Vertical. Okay, well, I'm going to put another container in here, which is going to be a frame layout. That's just for positioning our progress bar. And the width will be match parent, and we'll wrap content for the height, very similar with what we've done in the MediaSource tutorial, the one before this. And I don't believe, we will revisit this in case I need to set the ID. I don't believe I need to set the ID just yet. And now inside here, we're going to set up our what's called the simple ExoPlayer view. So in here, I need to call that one there. Thank you, Android Studio. And the width again will be match parent, and the height will be wrap content, and we will give it an ID as well. I'll call it the ID for this simple ExoPlayer view, so we know it's a view. Okay, and underneath this, we're just going to put the progress bar. And we're just going to wrap content for both of those. and I need to set the ID for progress bar. It's called progress. Bar. Set the visibility for that to invisible. We'll turn it on at a later stage, and we'll set layout gravity because we're in the frame layout to center just for our progress bar. Okay, that's the only changes I'm going to make to the frame layout, which is mainly used to host our simple ExoPlayer view, and we're only going to show the top portion of the player, so we want to fill out the rest of it just as we've done with the previous examples. So I'm going to add a scroll view, and the width will be match parent wrap content for the scroll view, and now we're going to add a text view, match parent and wrap content for the height of that, and I also need to set the text for that. And we're going to call string, and I'll just call this lip sum. Okay, we will need to add some text to that. So I've just pressed on a Mac Alt Enter, and the resource value, let me go into my browser here, copy the contents of lip sum, and go back into Android Studio and paste that in there. Okay, and I'll just tidy up the bottom here and save that. So these are the only changes that I want to make to our layout file. Now we'll set up our activity members. So we need to go into the main activity down here. So the first one I'm going to create is going to be the simple ExoPlayer. And this is actually going to be a late init, so we'll initialize this at a later stage. I'll call this simple ExoPlayer of the type simple ExoPlayer. And I also need to create a value for our playback position. We'll call this playback. And I'm going to set this as a long just by appending the L there. So we need to use a long in this case. And I'm also going to set up a member just for our URL. And in this case, it's going to be a dash URL. So we'll call this dash URL equals, and I can't remember what it is, but we'll go back to my website here and copy and paste a copy of this in there. And I'm using the Bugs Bunny again. I'm grabbing it from the BBC website this time. And go back into Android Studio and paste that into there. Okay, I've just got a couple more here. One's going to be for the bandwidth meter, which just provides us with the available bandwidth. And this is going to be, we'll call this just bandwidth meter. And it's going to be, we're going to initialize it later with the lazy delegate. And we're going to use this call, initialize it with the default bandwidth meter. And I'm also going to set up a adaptive track selection factory as well. And I'll call this adaptive track selection factory. Again, it's going to be, we're going to be using the lazy delegate. We just need to put value in front of that. So call the lazy delegate. And this is just to generate it, we'll call the adaptive track selection factory, and in here we need to pass the bandwidth meter, just to initialize it with that value there. Now we're going to do the preparation of the simple ExoPlayer, and first thing we need to do is set up a MediaSource which defines the media player, which defines the media required by the ExoPlayer. Okay, so I'll create a function to create our MediaSource, and I'm just going to call it build MediaSource. And we're going to take pass in a parameter, URI parameter, and it's going to return a MediaSource. We'll set up a value here. This value is going to represent the data source factory. And this is going to be the default HTTP data source factory. And it's going to take a couple of arguments here. One's going to represent the user agent. Just delete that. And the second parameter will pass in the bandwidth meter. Okay, I need to set up another value here, which is going to represent the dash chunk source factory. And to create that, it's going to be the default dash chunk source here. We need to call the factory on that and pass in our data source factory. Now we can return our dash media, which is going to be dash media source, and you need to pass in the URI and the data source factory, the dash chunk source, and we can set the final two parameters as null. Okay, and so this will build us the media source, which has all the details of the media that the ExoPlayer is required for preparation. So next, I'm just going to create another function called prepare ExoPlayer. Okay, that's because first thing we need to do is just set up a formatted URI. So I'm just going to call this URI, and we need to pass in our address from above, which is the dash URL, and then we'll create another value to represent the media source. To get that, we call the above function build media source and pass in the URI, and then it's just a matter of calling our simple ExoPlayer and prepare and pass in our media source variable that we just created before. Okay, and so these two are basically the prepare ExoPlayer will basically, we've now prepared it with the details of the media source, which also includes the URL. Right, now we'll create a function to initialize the media player. And I'll just call it Initialize ExoPlayer. Did I say media player before? That's the previous tutorial. Okay, so we'll just call our simple ExoPlayer, and we're going to initialize that. We'll need to call the ExoPlayer factory and create a new simple instance. Okay, this is going to take several values. One's going to be the default renderers factory. And inside that, it's just going to take the context of the activity. The next one was going to be the default track selector. and that's going to take our adapters track selector factory. And finally, we need to have load a default load control. Okay, so we now have our simple ExoPlayer initialized. Now we can prepare it from basically calling the prepare ExoPlayer function we just created before. And now we'll call our simple ExoPlayer view, which does supply us with the player, and set our player to that view. And finally, we just can start playing. So we'll call simple ExoPlayer seek to, and that will be with the playback position. And now we can just call simple ExoPlayer to actually play. So play when ready, we set that as true. Okay, so we send this call off to the ExoPlayer library, and that's going to do the buffering and the rendering in the background, not in the UI thread, for us. And once it's ready, it will start playback. So the library actually does that for us, which is quite nice. And since we made a function called Initialize Player, we'll create one called Release Player. It's called Release ExoPlayer. Okay, when we're releasing it, we could be switching to another application and coming back to this application, so we want to save the playback position. And we'll call it simple ExoPlayer, current position. I did have to make a change here. I just made that just before, but just for your note here, this was a value. So that gives us an error because a value you can only assign it once, then you can't change its value. So you will need to go up here and change the playback position to a var, where you can actually change the contents of that value, that variable. Okay, so keep a note in there, that was a little typo. Okay, so back to Release Player, we're saving the position just in case we need to resume playback. And now we'll call simple ExoPlayer release, just to release all the resources of the ExoPlayer. So we've got these two, Initialize ExoPlayer and Release ExoPlayer. We're going to put those into the activity lifecycle. So I set up the activity lifecycle calls just below the on create. And so the first one, let's just do on start. And it's just a matter of calling Initialize ExoPlayer. And we'll do similar for on stop. And we'll call Release ExoPlayer. And for playing and stopping, these should be the only changes we need to make for that. Okay, and finally, we're going to just set up our progress bar just to notify us when we're buffering and when playback commences. So go to the top here, we need to add another listener here, and it's going to be player.eventListener, and then implement those methods. I need to implement or call them all. Okay, I'm only going to be using one from here, so I'll remove the other to-dos from these other methods. Let's quickly do that. So it's on player state changed. I'll just tidy up the remainder. So on player state change is where we're going to monitor when to display the progress bar or not. So we'll do a check here. So if playback state equals player state buffering. So if we're currently buffering, we want to show the progress indicator. So we'll just call our progress bar. Set the visibility to visible. Else if playback state equals player state ready, basically just means we're ready for playback. Set the progress bar, visibility equals view invisible in this case. Okay, so we've set these two player states there, but we do need to set the listener. So we'll do that in the Initialize player itself, and we'll just do that in the bottom here. So we'll just call the simple ExoPlayer and it's add listener, and we just pass it the activity context because we implemented it in the main activity itself. Okay, so these should be all the changes we need to make. So let's run this and see if we can get playback using the ExoPlayer. And so the buffers, so the ExoPlayer started up straight away. You'll notice that we've got these media controls as well that are provided to the ExoPlayer by default. And we didn't have to worry about the width and setting the width and the height as we had to do with the media player in the previous tutorial. And so this works fine. So this just proves that the example we've gone through, the code works fine for this. And that concludes the tutorial on how to stream URLs using the ExoPlayer. Those URLs were dash URLs. We basically set everything up using the default methods you will have noticed there. And once we were running, we did the ExoPlayer library does provide us with the media controllers as well, the play, pause buttons, and everything like that. And it also done the sizing for us using the ExoPlayer view as well. So compared to the media player, a lot of the setting up was already done by the ExoPlayer library, which came in quite handy. So that concludes this tutorial. If you want to get notified of future tutorials that I'm working on, don't forget to click on that subscribe button. And I do request that you don't ask any questions on the YouTube comments. As you can imagine, I've just got way too many just to even try to read, besides trying to put together a response. I don't live to 1,000,000 years old, so I just don't possibly have the time. But I do provide means of you getting in contact with me just to get hold of my time. Note it is payable time. You can do that through CodeMint, where I can support you, or on the website here I've set up a free consultation for up to 10 minutes, and that's where we can just have a quiet, relaxed chat and I can understand your requirements. Whether you want to learn Android programming, Kotlin and Android programming, or you got small projects you want me to help out with, I'm quite happy just to spend a few minutes just to chat to you and see if we're a good fit for providing a solution there. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial. Thank you for taking the time for watching. Bye for now.